It's the Farmer to Farmer podcast, episode 43, and this is your host, Chris Blanchard. My guests today are Dru and Adam Montri from Ten Hens Farm. Dru and Adam raise vegetables in 6 large high tunnels and on 3 acres outdoors in Bath, Michigan, just outside of Lansing. They also both work off-farm jobs related to farming. Dru is the executive director of the Michigan Farmers Market Association, and Adam as the Hoophouse Outreach Specialist at Michigan State University Center for Regional Farm Systems. In this wide-ranging discussion, Dru, Adam, and I talk about how they balance their off-farm jobs with a farming operation that could easily keep them both employed full-time, including their strategies for managing employees and their relationship with each other. We also dig into the nuts and bolts of selling to restaurants and how they grew with and helped to grow that marketplace in their area. We dig into winter production and the high tunnel they use for a packing shed, and we talk about Dru's experience as a woman farmer and agricultural activist. As you'll hear, we had a lot of fun doing this episode, and I think you're going to get a ton of value out of it. Thank you for joining us again this week for the Farmer to Farmer podcast. The Farmer to Farmer podcast is brought to you by Vermont Compost, founded by organic crop growing professionals committed to meeting the need for high quality composts and compost-based living soil mixes for certified organic plant production. VermontCompost.com. The Farmer to Farmer podcast is brought to you by BCS America. BCS 2-wheel tractors are versatile, maneuverable in tight spaces, lightweight for less compaction, and easy to maintain and repair on the farm. Gear-driven and built to last for decades of dependable service. BCSAmerica.com. Dru and Adam Montri, welcome to the Farmer to Farmer podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
I'm so glad that you could both join us today. I think this is something we've been trying to do more and more of lately is to get couples on the show now that we've got the technology figured out on how to do that. And I think it's kind of fun to hear from everybody.
And it lets us get to spend a little time together too. Right, Dru?
It does. It's nice to talk to you.
Are you guys actually in the same room?
Oh, no, of course not.
Okay. Together, but separate.
Yeah, on the same line.
Okay. So why don't you guys fill us in a little bit on Ten Hens Farm and how you got started and how you guys relate to it and what it is now?
Yeah, great question. Adam and I met in 2002, and we were both studying horticulture, so we always had a dream about starting our own farm someday, but we weren't at that point then. We got married in 2004, and we were at Penn State at the time, and when we finished up, we took some time to travel and work on other farms and see farms across the country, which was really incredible. And kind of our slogan at that time was, well, we're going to learn as much as we can, but it's not our farm. But someday we're going to have our own farm. So we came back to Michigan. We're both originally from Michigan. Our families are in Michigan. And we moved back in 2006. And in 2007, we bought our farm, which was a perfect place for us at the time. It's in Bath, Michigan, which is just north of Michigan State University, where Adam and I both are housed in terms of our off-farm work. And it is we have a 1910s farmhouse and about 2 acres of land that we own. And we can, when we talk more about scaling up, we can talk about land that we farm in addition to land we own. But it's been a great learning experience for us, I would say, over the last 8 years.
How close are you guys to East Lansing, where Michigan State University is located?
So, Dru, I think it's about 10 miles to the center of campus, but we're in a really nice little bedroom community of one flashing red stoplight in town. It's actually growing pretty quickly. The 2000 census, there was a little more than 4,000 people. The 2010 census, there were over 10,000 people. So it's a quickly growing area, but it feels like when we turn on, the road to get out of town that we're kind of driving off to a little haven. But if we need anything, we're really, close to be able to hop in, which is something that we were looking for and kind of that rural character, but close to things.
Is East Lansing your primary market for your produce?
Yeah, we our primary market is what we call the Greater Lansing area, which is probably from the about maybe a 50-mile radius from where we're at. But yeah, the greater Lansing area. And we've just recently added a mid-sized distributor to our market. And so that product will travel outside of the Lansing area. That wholesale product will travel outside of the Lansing area, but not on our delivery route.
Okay. And so you said 2 acres. Now, but you said also that you've got more in production than that.
Yeah,
Right.
we do. We rent an acre from our neighbors that are just west of us, and we actually have 3 hoop houses on their property. We have a great relationship with them. They're wonderful, and we also rent a couple acres from a neighbor who is maybe 2 miles or so south of us. Is that right, Adam?
Yeah, it's about a little more than 10 to 15 minute tractor ride. So what we were looking for when we were renting land was, that it's easy to get to, but also that we were able to drive the tractor to that so that we didn't have to buy a trailer, which we don't have, or also, use the truck to move the tractor. And then if someone else, an employee, was out delivering, they'd be able to take the truck. So we didn't want to tie up the truck and the tractor and have to buy a trailer.
So what does that add up to if you put all 3 of those parcels together for total acres that you guys are farming? So
we're about 3 acres, and included in that is about 17,000 square feet of hoop house or high tunnel space, which works out to basically 6 30 by 96 foot houses.
So that 3 acres, does that include cover crop ground and field roads and everything, or is that 3 acres total that you guys are actually farming?
So it includes everything that we're farming, and we just started renting the additional 2 acres this year. So it kind of came up. Some friends of ours were renting it, and they had some changes in their life, took some different jobs, moved away, and started farming on some property that they purchased, and so that property came up. So we were able to get access to that this year, and we'll continue that going forward. And in the past, because it's been so tight and intensive, we haven't been able to do a lot of cover cropping. So we've mostly been, we can purchase in some compost from close by, and on that smaller acreage, for a reasonable price, we were more or less driving our outdoor and indoor production with compost. But this year we actually have rye cover crop on all of our outdoor growing space, which is a first for us.
Isn't it fun that first time that you actually pull that off?
The warm fall has helped us.
I was going to say the weather is on our side this year, which is great.
Yeah, all around the Midwest. I don't know how it's been in the rest of the country, but it really has been this remarkably long, dragged out fall, which is kind of getting on my nerves. I'm ready to go cross country skiing, but I guess it's good if you have to work outside.
Right.
So I'm really interested. You guys have high tunnels on rented ground, half of your high tunnels.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Like Dru said, we've got incredible neighbors that own about 40 acres, and that they have got most of it in a conservation trust, never to redeveloped. He worked for the DNR, Department of Natural Resources, for a long time, doing illustrations for their publications. And so what they've done is when they bought it, they actually were corn and soybean, mostly rotation when they bought it. And they have now converted it into a number of different ecosystems. So they've got a prairie ecosystem. They have a jack pine forest. They've got just all these different features that they've added to this property. So 38 of that acres is in conservation trust, never to be, developed. And then they've got this acre that used to be a pasture and that's next to their house. And they are really supportive of what we're doing. They're really incredible people, and they've just allowed us to do it. And we talked to them early on. We wanted to pay them rent. They took a payment. We twisted their arm enough for them to take some cash payment early on. And now it's not we asked if they wanted a formal written arrangement. And they said no, if we're okay, that they're okay. And basically now it's those hoop houses are on their property. Whatever they would like to take out of them is at any time, in any amount is open.
I'm surprised that you guys don't have a written agreement. To me, that would seem like something that you guys would need in your business. I mean, that's half your covered production space.
We talk about that all the time, that in some ways I think in life and in business, sometimes there are always contradictions to the things that you do. And both Adam and I work with other farmers. We talk with new and beginning farmers, and we always tell people you should have a written rental agreement or a lease agreement. That's so important for your business. And then there's also, the flip side of that, where there are some relationship transactions that are, just built on strong relationships. And we are really fortunate to have that and have incredible trust between, both Hazel Ridge Farm and our farm. And so I wouldn't recommend it to other folks. It certainly, it is certainly the best practice to have written rental and lease agreements. But in this situation for us, we're both of our farms are there for the long term, and we're really fortunate to be able to work together like that.
Fair enough. So, Dru, you mentioned the work that you do with other farmers, with beginning farmers and folks that are scaling up. Both you and Adam work off the farm, right? For a significant portion of your time.
We do. So we both work a lot, and we're really fortunate to be in positions where we love the work that we're doing. So I have worked with the Michigan Farmers Market Association, was the founding director, and I'm now the executive director. Have been working with the association since we started in 2006. And through that position, I have the incredible opportunity to work with about 300 farmers markets in the state and the thousands of small farmers and small food and ag-based businesses that sell through those markets. So it's certainly related and tied to the work that we do on our farm as well. And there's a lot of what I learn on our farm that I can take to the Farmers Market Association, and vice versa. I learn so much from the people that I work with.
And Adam, you're involved with Michigan State University and the student farm there, right?
Somewhat, yeah. So I work, at this point, I'm 65% time in the Department of Horticulture, and the faculty advisor for the student farm is in the Department of Horticulture. When we first came back to Michigan, I was working 50% time for MSU and was really closely tied to the student farm, and 50% time for an organization called Michigan Food and Farming Systems, who is housed on campus, but it's his own nonprofit similar to MIFMA, which is the Michigan Farmers Market Association, where Dru works. So as things have grown or directions have changed and funding lines have changed, I work less with or at the student farm, although I still consider everyone their colleagues. But I mostly work on two projects in the Department of Horticulture. One is Hoophouse for Health, which works with farmers and vulnerable youth and families to supply capital to build hoop houses, and then incentives to purchase the products that are grown on those farms by vulnerable youth and families as a way to pay back those loans. And then an online course that's a not-for-credit for farmer hoop houses for year-round production course. So those are, and I've gone from 100% time down to 65% time now at MSU.
And I think it's important to add that the Hoophouse for Health program that Adam works on is a joint program between MIFMA, the Department of Horticulture, and the Center for Regional Food Systems. And so even when we're off-farm, we work together in our off-farm positions closely as well.
That's pretty cute.
And always peachy.
Exactly.
So, and I would agree with what Dru said, is that, I think we're very fortunate to have the positions and the jobs and the people around us that we do, and that both, just like she said, with our farm strengthening her MIFMA position and her work at MIFMA strengthening our farm, I feel the same way, that it's what we learn from the farmers that we work with as part of Hoophouse for Health and otherwise. And I think what we're able to share from our farm with them, just they reinforce and make our farm stronger and better, and make the programs and the farmers that we work with stronger and better as well.
And, one thing that I think is important for people to understand is that both of our off-farm jobs are incredibly flexible. And so we both work a lot, but we also have the ability that if something has to get planted at home, or a hoop house has to get covered, or, if something comes up with one of our daughters, we have flexibility in our off-farm job to be able to work around that. And so there are times when, I work early in the morning on MIFMA stuff, or I work on weekends on MIFMA stuff, and we've been able to blend these positions in a way that works really well for us. And that is not the case for everyone that tries to have an off-farm job. So if you have a very set schedule where there's not a lot of flexibility, it might be a lot harder. But in our case, we have flexibility that allows us to come up with a balance that works.
But still, that's a lot of off-farm work. I mean, and 6 high tunnels and a couple of acres of production, that's plenty of time to, that's plenty of farming to keep you guys busy all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're fortunate also that we have 3 great employees, and that know what they're doing, and that we have brought their knowledge, and also we've trained, and my dad also helps out. My parents moved close a couple years ago, and my dad grew up farming, and he likes to do deliveries. He likes to come pick tomatoes early in the morning. And so, between our 3 employees and him and us, like you said, we keep busy, but our employees are really great and helpful too.
I'm really curious. Do your employees work when you're working, or do they work all the time and kind of work independently around your schedule?
So the answer is yes and yes. So they definitely get lists, and I try to work with them. So I'm mostly on farm Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so when I'm there, I'm mostly working with them, or at least directing them. A lot of times there might be tractor work to do, or other things, planting, seeding, and they may be harvesting. But they also we try to keep them around for multiple years, and so they know where things are. They know how we like things packed. They know where I leave lists. They know how the farm functions, and so even like right now, they're at home harvesting and packing for restaurant deliveries today, and then my dad is going to take our truck and go deliver once they've got everything harvested and packed.
It's really great that you've got a farming system that can work that smoothly, that it doesn't require your constant supervision. How have you gone about setting something like that up? Because that's something that a lot of people really struggle with.
I think that we should get back to how we should set it up, but we should also not portray it in a way that it's flawless.
Oh, wait, I thought that all of the Farmer to Farmer podcast guests were flawless. We're going to have to end this interview right now.
All right.
There's no weeds on our farm either. Just
yeah. So, we do have, we do have great systems in place. And I think that, there have been times where things have gone wrong, and we've come home and had to rethink how we do things and how we be more clear about what our expectations are. So we've had examples where Adam has talked about running a hoop house warmer because we have a crop in there like ginger. And we have come home before, and our team has taken that has understood that direction as not rolling up the sides to have any ventilation. And so the house that day was probably about 110, maybe 120 inside. And we had a major setback. And, we got water on the crop right away, but we lost, all above ground growth. And it was really trying, because for us, ginger in Michigan is a high value crop. And that has just led us to try to be much more precise when we're giving directions, and things like, hey, when you prep a bed, especially for new people on our farm crew, prepping a bed isn't one step. And so breaking that down into the steps that they need to take to, clean it out, and then make sure that they're either tilling or broad forking, and then raking it out and adding compost. So, for us, sometimes it's like, if you prep a bed, it's just, we might understand exactly what each of us means by that. But to someone new on our farm crew, breaking it down into multiple steps so they really understand the process is much more helpful. And so those, I think, getting back to your question, developing systems like that, and then always revising them so they make sense, are important.
I think it's so critical to for everybody when to be able to lay out those expectations really clearly. I mean, it's almost like an abstraction when you say prep a bed. That, I mean, if you're the farmer, what the outcome is that you're looking for and how to create it. But like you said, there's a bunch of steps and a bunch of decision points in there that kind of need to be outlined if you don't have years and years of experience in vegetable farming to understand what exactly that means. And it's important for you and it's important for the employees so that they get a feeling of competence and success out of it.
Exactly. And even if people do have some farm experience and they've worked on other farms, the way that we prep beds on our farm is probably different than other farms near us. And so us being more clear about what that means on our farm is something that we've been learning how to do better.
You said you have some systems for doing that. How do those systems actually manifest? Like what do you do to tell somebody, hey, prep that bed?
I would say I think for the bed prep is a really good example, especially because as our farm has grown, that's changed for us. So when we had one hoop house and one or no employees, it was broad forking. And so then when some employees came on, it was showing them how to do that. And then as we've grown and we've got to 6 hoop houses now, we're driving the tractor in there with a tiller on it and tilling. And so it's changed to, okay, now instead of our employees needing to be able to know how to use the broad fork and the claw and the rake, it's now saying, okay, like I'm going in there or we're going in there, we're tilling with the tractor. Now this is how wide we do our bed. So we need to communicate like not only this is the standard size of our bed, but why is our bed that standard size? And so each time they go in, they know, okay, this bed is 4 feet here. And so every time they go in, it's not like some houses are 3 feet or some houses are 4 feet. So I think it's standardizing things like that across the farm, which I think, our house systems work, our standardization so that we don't have, 4 or 5 different bed sizes. So now they know, okay, if I till it, they're going to measure them out and make aisles this wide, and then they're going to come in and they're going to put this much compost on, and they're going to put this many drip lines down. So I think getting those standardizations in place of bed size, number of drip lines, amount of compost per bed, those types, amount of fertilizer, if we're using some granulated fertilizer, those types of things, having them in place. And, ideally, and we've talked about it, is somewhat like an employee handbook that is, down the road a little ways, but that we're starting to, brainstorm about putting together so that all employees will have an idea of what those standard bed sizes are, what cedar plate to use for seeding this, or those types of things. And the other thing we're trying to do is give our employees a little more skill training or job development and opportunities, so that we're trying to teach them all how to drive the tractor, so that they don't have to wait. If something needs to be prepped, they can drive the tractor, or they can change the equipment out, instead of, say, one of us having to be there to get on the tractor or to change the equipment out. And I think that just takes a little bit of time with each of them to train them, so that in the short term it might take longer, but in the long term, they're able to prep a bed when we're not there, and say it's going to rain the next day when we will be there, but we need to get it prepped today because it's going to rain tomorrow. So I think those types of things are how we're trying to do that, is standardization across and then have everyone trained up to a certain level and skill set of being able to do each thing.
And I think that we're able to do some of that too, in terms of like the trust that comes with letting your farm crew, run equipment when you're not on the farm. We, like Adam mentioned earlier, is when we hire someone to, work with us, we're not looking for just a short-term seasonal person that might join us for, 2 or 3 months. We're looking for someone that's willing to commit to working on the farm for, a couple years, or, maybe longer. They live in our local community. And that, I think, helps us build trust. And, there's also the reality for us is that when our farm crew is on our farm and we're not there, our home is also open, and, they use the kitchen and they use the bathroom. And so there's a lot of trust on our farm when it comes to our farm labor too.
And would imagine that your 4-season production system really helps with your ability to attract and retain people from over the years, to really say to somebody at the outset, we're hiring for a job, not hiring for a summer position.
Yeah, I agree. And their hours definitely are, lower than they are during the summer, obviously, with just 17,000 square feet. But we do try to keep them busy. We have other projects on the farm that, we need to get done, that sometimes get done. Like we have a chicken coop on the list that we need to tear down. And so,
I'm so glad you mentioned that.
It's on the list still, and so like being able to have employees that maybe they're not, only harvesting and packing and generating income, they're also able to help on other parts of the farm that maybe, if we were there more often or more time, that we wouldn't pay labor to do. But it also lets us, like you said, to keep them around so that come spring, we don't have to go through a whole new training with someone new, every year, or a whole new crew every year.
So you guys started the farm while you were working off farm, and you've continued to grow the operation over the years. How have you made those decisions with balancing that with your off farm jobs, which seem to provide a lot of value to you? It seems they don't seem like things that you're trying to. It's not like you're going to quit next year.
Right. I think that I get a question. We get asked a lot of, when am I especially going to, leave MSU? And my response is always like, I wish I didn't like my MSU job so much, because if I could just walk away, it would be, easier maybe to just be on farm full time. But I love my off farm job, and I don't want to leave it or quit it. So I think what we've been fortunate to have is, not this pressure to scale up very quickly, to go in big and be big, that we've been able to. So Dru, help me with dates here. I think, we added one hoop house in 2008. That was our first one. Yep. And then we sold out that winter. And so we added another one the next year, or half of one. And then that sold out. And then some restaurants opened that weren't here. So some market opportunities opened. And then a year-round farmers market started in the town that we live in. And so I think fortunately we've been able to not have this, all right, we're going to scale up and we're going to go all in and we're going to be really, get bigger right from the get-go. We've been able to scale up year to year as those market opportunities have presented themselves. More restaurants opening, mid-level distributor, other farms wanting to buy product. And so I think that has been really fortunate that, and again, that's different for everyone in the situations that you're in. But, the greater Lansing area has been growing, for around local or regional food for the last, 6 or 7 years. And we were fortunate to have started our farm, at the outset of that. And so that we could go after, and be a part of some of these markets as they became available.
And in addition to that, around when we went from 1 to 2 to 6, when we added the last 4, Adam had been flirting with some hoop houses on a farm that was about 10 miles north of us, some farmers that we had worked with in the past, and they were thinking about moving, got relocated for a job. And so that's also another opportunity that came up, is that we had an opportunity to move some hoop houses for a really good price. And so, a lot of things for us, it's just when the opportunity presented itself, it helped make those decisions as to, okay, are we ready to take this on? And, probably, honestly, at that time, at least for the last 4 hoop houses, we probably weren't ready to take that on at that time. We were just having our second baby, and I was finishing my PhD, and we were working off farm, and, life was really hectic at that point in time. But it was such a good opportunity that, somehow we've just made it work. And that's also, we also have worked really hard and we put a lot of time into our collective work.
How important has it been to have those off-farm jobs as a source of stability and capitalization for the operation?
I think they're imperative for us in the way that we just decided to grow our business. And it's, early on, we financed, the farm was self-financed until we added those 4 hoop houses and a walk-in cooler. So, the first few hoop houses, the land, those types of things we were able to do because of off-farm jobs. And so when we did take our first kind of big traditional loan, we had taken some other loans, some family loans that we had paid back, which Dru and I have also talked about being very thankful and privileged, and understand that's not the situation for everyone to be able to have a family loan to put up our 2/3 of our first hoop house. So that we've paid back now. And so having those off-farm jobs allowed us to grow our business more slowly until it was to a point where we said, okay, these 4 hoop houses and this walk-in cooler, we've got a market for that product. So then let's go ahead and take a more traditional loan with interest and monthly payments and those types of things. But we didn't have to do that right when we started.
Yeah, and I would say in addition to that, we've been farming. We also have 2 young daughters. Lydia's 7 now and was born just a couple days after we put our first hoop house up. We didn't get the plastic on that one for a little bit because we were slightly delayed by having a baby. And
you let that get in the way?
Sometimes life it just happens I was talking to her the whole time we were building the house when she was in my stomach, and I was like, can you please just hold off until August? Like, we just need 2 more weeks. And she didn't listen. And then, Allison was born right around the time we were putting up those 4 hoop houses. And so, our kids, because we have off-farm jobs, there also are some stresses like having good health insurance that Adam gets through Michigan State that we haven't had to worry about, sourcing that through the farm. And that's like just, another, I think, benefit. And it's a point of stress that we don't have to have because we have that opportunity through Adam's work with Michigan State.
Yeah, I think that stability, it's got to come with a lot of challenges, right? I mean, the juggling so many different things and ran into this concept a couple of podcasts ago of limited cognitive bandwidth. There's only so many things that it's actually possible to think about before your brain explodes. And that must be hard. But at the same time, yeah, having a paycheck, man, there's nothing that compares to having a paycheck.
Yeah. It definitely has benefited us. And like I said, for us too, the flexibility of us to be able to, and it's different every single day of how we wrap all of the different things that we're doing together. And it is a lot and it is chaotic. And some days it does feel overwhelming. And, some weeks go by and Adam and I are like, oh, it's so nice to see you. Like our paths haven't crossed in a while. But I think that, like Adam mentioned earlier, is that we love what we do. And it's hard to look at this list of the things that we're involved with and say, okay, this is the piece of it that's going to go, or we're going to stop doing this. And so, I think that has been, really good for us, is that at least we're in a place where we're doing things that we love, even when it gets chaotic and sometimes overwhelming.
Maybe to add to that too, is that, and sometimes it seems like, it might be easier or different if we weren't involved in the same industry with our off-farm jobs, or even the same projects with our off-farm jobs. But I also think that really helps us, because if something at my job or something at Dru's job, or there's an issue, or not a bad issue, just something that comes up, we speak the same language. We speak this, that she can say, oh, this market, this is what's happening, or, we're doing long-term planning for the Michigan Farmers Market Association. Can I run some ideas by you and see what you think? And I can do the same thing, with farmers that we work with, to her. And it's not just like, you're listening to me or I'm listening to you talk and you're going to say yes or or okay.
That's not really how our conversation goes.
We have, because we work in the same industry, we have the ability to brainstorm together on the work, our off-farm jobs as well.
Yeah, and we also, in agriculture, I think, and especially with the programs and the farms that we work with, we've been able to, bring our kids with us. And so when we go on Hoop for Health site visits in Northwest Michigan for 4 days, we take Lydia and Allison. They live on a farm and they get to go see other farms, and they think it's as fascinating as we do in different ways, of course. But everyone that we work with, or the vast majority of people that we work with, have been really open to us having our kids with us, and we've made that decision that we definitely do work a lot, and we don't want it to always be like, okay, is it our kids, or is it our family, or is it work, or like what's the priority today? But we're trying to develop this lifestyle where we can do it all at the same time, and sometimes that means our kids coming to work with us, or our kids going to conferences with us, or going on site visits, and we just do our best to make that work.
We say, and maybe another thing that's important to add in is that we don't want it to sound like it's always peachy, that, we hop in the truck and we've got our kids and we go to these other farms and, everyone rides great, or, it's that we've been married 11 years now. And it hasn't always been, happy-go-lucky, especially as you're, finishing school, building a business, starting a family, that though there are stresses, and, we do argue and we do fight sometimes. And as we've, as our kids have grown and as our business has grown, and I think as we've grown together, we've, figured out how to make that okay. That, we aren't always going to get along. And there are days where, I'm really stressed, or Dru's really stressed, or the kids are really stressed. And we try to just not have all of us be stressed all on the same day, which also doesn't always happen, And
sometimes we have days where, at the end of the day, you're just exhausted and you're like, all right, like, we're just going to try again tomorrow. Can we just let this day go and, wake up refreshed and renewed? And, even Lydia now, who's 7, some days will say, can I just try again tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, let's all just try again tomorrow, because, we're also trying to figure out, we're learning every day about parenting and all of the joys and challenges that come along with that. And so, as much as we're learning about how to make our marriage work and how to make our farm work and how to make our jobs work, it's a constant, things are constantly changing, and we're constantly figuring out how to do that better.
So how do you guys figure out how to do that better? I mean, what you talked about kind of being able to call a halt at the end of the day and say, okay, we're starting over again tomorrow. What else have you found works? Because I mean, what you guys are describing it sounds like a pretty intense situation a lot of the time.
Yeah, it is. And we also both have consulting jobs that we do too, that are in other places. So that adds into it. But I think, and Dru, we kind of started joking about this, but before we got married, we went through the marriage counseling and what do you want out of a marriage? And the pastor that married us said, sometimes you just need to say, I'm sorry. And the response needs to be, you are forgiven. And it was kind of a joke between us for a long time of like, it kind of seemed hokey and okay, sure. If we need to say this so that, you'll marry us, that's great. And it actually has become something that is pretty powerful in our relationship, to be like, when you say, I think saying I'm sorry, we're both pretty stubborn and bullheaded sometimes.
Determined, driven.
Yeah. And so, but to be able to, when you say you're sorry, like one of us we're recognizing that we did something wrong.
Even if we don't know what it was.
Even if we don't know what it is. Yeah. And then for that other person to say you're forgiven is kind of, I think it takes those things that when you do have fights and when you do have arguments, and those things that just build and build and build and build and build, they might be little things, but they build to a point where it's like it can explode, and you don't even know what you're fighting about. You're just fighting, and so being able to just that, I feel like that, end of the day, can we just try tomorrow? Or, I'm sorry and you're forgiven are kind of like a little reset button or a big reset button, for our relationship, and that says, we love each other and we are doing this together, and it's not easy, but we're doing this together.
And it allows us, I think, because we have so much going on, and because we have kids that sometimes interrupt conversations, and we don't have a ton of spare time to just sit down after dinner and talk it out, which we love to do when we're able to make time for it. But I think that, we really try to not hold grudges or let things build up, and just be able to let things go. And that we definitely agree and talk about things that are, long-term visions and things that are incredibly important to us, and how what we, see our farm looking like in 10 years and in 20 years. And, someday when we're 80 or 90, what this place is going to be to us. Those are things that we spend a lot of time talking about, but we don't get on each other about little things like where the potatoes are going to get planted, or if there was a change of plans and, something else got seeded, and, all of those things we just kind of let each other take the lead on. And that's probably something that has changed more too over, the last, since Lydia was born, after the 7 years, is that we kind of have developed different roles. So we actually, since we've had kids, we work less side by side on the farm, but we both contribute in different ways.
Let's take a break and get a word from our sponsors here, and then we'll be back with Adam and Dru Montri to talk some more about Ten Hens Farm and getting along. The Farmer to Farmer podcast is sponsored by Vermont Compost Company, makers of living media for organic growers since 1992. In the transplant greenhouse, all of your investment in plant materials, heat, labor, and overhead depend on the performance of the media where you expect your plants to grow. And that media has a really hard job to do: produce a healthy plant in just a few cubic centimeters of soil. When I started farming, I focused on getting the cheapest ingredients I could find to make my own potting soil, and later on finding cheap potting soil that was already put together. But I found what so many farmers have, that saving money on inputs doesn't always result in increased profits. Jennifer at Vermont Compost can tell story after story of customers who switched to less expensive options, but who have come back to Vermont Compost for the consistency and the quality of their potting soils. And even though it's not all about saving money, Vermont Compost's pre-buy program can help you get what your plants need at the best price, with the best shipping options, delivered at a time that works best for you. Plus, their shared truckloads program organizes shipping to other regions in ways that get shipping prices down to the level you'd pay right there in the great state of Vermont. Feed the soil. VermontCompost.com. The Farmer to Farmer podcast is brought to you by BCS America. BCS two-wheeled tractors are often mistaken for just a rototiller, but they are truly superior pieces of farming equipment. Engineered and built in Italy, where small farms are a way of life, BCS tractors are built to standards of quality and durability expected of real agricultural equipment, the kind of dependability that every farm needs. I've worked with BCS tractors for over 24 years, and I wouldn't consider anything else for my small tractor needs. And I'm not the only fan. More than 1.5 million people in 50 countries have discovered the advantages of owning Europe's most popular two-wheeled tractor. And these really are small tractors, with the kinds of features found on their four-wheeled cousins and a wide array of equipment: power harrows, rotary plows, flail mowers, snow throwers, sickle bar mowers, chippers, log splitters. You name it. You can probably put it on a BCS. Check out bcsamerica.com to see photos and videos of BCS in action. bcsamerica.com. Great. So we're back with Adam and Dru Montri of Ten Hens Farm in Bath, Michigan, which is right outside of East Lansing, which is right outside of Lansing. Adam and Dru, I think it's really interesting what you described before the break about, I'd almost call it a demand-driven scaling up. You said that in the early years, you kind of did this process of building and expanding as the market was building and expanding. But then a few years ago, you had an opportunity to dramatically increase your production and dove in and bought these 4 high tunnels and put those up on your farm. And so I think it's kind of interesting how you kind of have this stepwise approach. Can you talk a little bit more about how your markets have developed and how you've worked to develop your markets?
So maybe it's helpful to kind of position where Lansing is and what was happening or what is happening. And so we're about an hour away from Grand Rapids on the west side of the state, and about an hour from Ann Arbor, and about an hour and 20 to an hour and 30 minutes from Detroit. And all three of those places have had, and for a long time, a very big food culture. So, good restaurants, not necessarily, I mean, they definitely have high-end restaurants, but also just like solid, good food, as well as these high-end restaurants. And Lansing was sort of situated in the middle of those, where we had a few, one or two, and then one would close. One's kind of been here forever and will probably continue to be. But we didn't have that in Lansing. And I grew up working in restaurants. I worked in them for about 15 years, everything from washing dishes to line cook in the back of the house, and everything from busing to bartending, waiting tables and that in the front of the house. So one of the things that we love to do and what we do spend our money on is going out to eat. And there weren't always great places here to do that. And what happened a few years ago, I think maybe people just were like, well, it's not here, so it can't survive, or it's not going to survive, or there's not a demand for it. And what ended up happening was actually two separate groups of people came here, and they both opened a food truck. So two food trucks started, and we got connected with them pretty quickly through mutual friends at different friends for different ones of those food trucks. And so, we kind of said, all right, like, here we go. Let's start selling a little bit more. And as they grew and they tried to kind of feel out what was happening, did they want to open a bricks and mortar restaurant also? Did they not? One of them went ahead and did it. One of them waited another year and did it. And so once that happened, we were kind of at this point of saying, all right, like, we can supply these restaurants. As they grew, we could supply them more. And now, as people have seen those restaurants be successful, other restaurants have opened. And so, right now, I would say in Lansing, we're in this, or Grading Lancer area, we're in this very big expansion phase of restaurants. And I think probably what will end up eventually happening is, it'll grow, and then it won't be able to support the number there, and it may shrink a little. And I think eventually it'll find its balance. But right now we've been able to supply restaurants, and now we're at a point, because we supply, a number of them, and we have our systems in place of how we do ordering, how we do pricing, how we do invoicing, how we do and when we do deliveries, those types of things. We can walk into any new restaurant that opens and say, here's a sample, here's our price list, here's how we do ordering, here's how we do these things. And we've got our stuff together, so to speak, in a professional way. And we know how to grow to a point of supplying them on a weekly basis with what they'd like. So I think that's kind of, where we've grown into. And also, now that we've grown beyond that, there's other farms in a multi-farm CSA and some other things that are in the area that we're also selling into. And maybe, Dru, do you think it's important to talk about, or you want to talk about how we got started before those restaurants or the market that we sell at was around?
Yeah, because I think that's a really interesting part of how we've kind of changed the way that we do business. When we started, we thought, so we built our first Hoophouse in July of 2008, and then got it planted in August, and probably, I can't remember exactly when we covered it, but probably sometime that fall. And it was interesting at that point in time, because we started having product when most farms around us were shutting down for the season, and so that was not planned. So we Lydia was born that summer. She came early, and things didn't go according to plan that summer, but it actually probably worked out better for us, because we had product in the winter when all of the farms around us were starting to slow down for the season. And so that first year, we just we started with a small email group of people that we knew in our community. I think it was like either 14 or 17. I'd have to go back and look. But people that we knew in our community, and we just sent out an email and said, hey, we have product to sell this winter. If you'd like to buy fresh produce during the winter, you can send me an email I think it was like by Tuesday at noon, and then they could pick it up on Wednesday or something like that. And so that first winter we did all direct sales, and it was just by email, and people would come to our home and our farm and pick it up. And we really had thought in the first couple of years of farming that we were probably going to go more strongly a direct market route, where we had on-farm sales and did some farmers markets. And we had of course, been working with our local township who was interested in starting a farmer's market, about starting a year-round market in our community. So we thought that would be the way that we were going to go. But then, when the food trucks started popping up, and we soon realized that because we juggle so many things off farm and our time is limited, that selling to restaurants and then other farms and a couple local grocery stores worked in terms of just managing it all, worked a lot better for us. So we still sell at the Bath Farmers Market every Thursday, and we still we're kind of playing with, again, the idea of having some on-farm sales, but we've moved and transitioned into these restaurant sales, which has been a really good option for us. And I think, one of the things that Adam didn't mention is that when we make connections with new restaurants, something, that I think we're both observing is that chefs move a lot in this community. And so sometimes, as long as we have a good, solid relationship with a chef, if that chef moves to another restaurant, it's like, boom, now we have another restaurant. And that also just that transition, the chef transition has helped us a lot.
So, Adam, you mentioned your process for ordering and pricing and invoicing. So can you talk to us a little bit about that? How does that work for Ten Hens Farm?
Sure. So we do everything by text. All our ordering is by text. We send out availability on either Sunday or Monday for Tuesday delivery, and then Wednesday for Thursday delivery. And they just text back. They get a list of, here is what we have this week. If we are, say, low on an item, we'll put that on there. So, we may have plenty of salad mix at some point. But if we maybe are down to the last of our beets, say for winter storage, we'll put on, limited amount. And so whoever orders those first gets those beets. So all our ordering is that way. Our prices we have a set price list for the year. I would say that our restaurant prices are somewhere between 80% and 100% are equal to our market prices. And the way we set that up is if we have a product that we can sell all through market at, that retail price, and we know we can sell it through the market, then the restaurants pay the same price as that market if they would like them. Other things are, again, 80-ish% or so of retail price at the market for the restaurants and wholesale. We do all of our invoicing through QuickBooks. We do all of our payroll processing through QuickBooks as well. So we have QuickBooks Online, and then we have QuickBooks Payroll that are integrated with each other. I think that costs around $75 a month now for those two. I think one's 45 or 30 and one's 30 or close to that. We do net 30 on everything. Some of the restaurants want to pay, some pay us on site when we drop off, some write a check, some pay cash, based on the invoice. Some wait till 30 days and, we get that check right at the 30-day mark. Some of them are beyond that 30 days, and we kind of have a, unspoken, we don't tell them, but I guess maybe we're telling them now, we kind of have this 10-day sort of grace period where if we get to be 40 days, we give them a call and say, hey, this is where you're at. These invoices are due. And we've only had 2 issues where people didn't pay, where we actually had to get naggy about it, and they both eventually paid. And those were usually at times when there was transition at the restaurants as well. So there was transition time there. Things may have got shuffled or whatever. So yeah, so that it's all orders on text, invoicing through QuickBooks, at net 30, and then the pricing, they get the price list at the beginning of the year and go from there.
And I think that, one of the things to just so people understand is that we have a relationship with all of the chefs that we work with. So that relationship doesn't start with a text message. That's now how we do invoicing, but the relationship, Adam mentioned already that, if it's someone new that we haven't met before, we'd go introduce ourselves. But most of the restaurants that we work with, and the chefs that work with, most of them, if not all, have come to the farm, have brought their restaurant crews to the farm. Some of them have helped us pull plastic on a house. Some of them have, helped out with other, activities on the farm. And we try to, at least once a year, eat at all of the restaurants that we sell to. And some of them we eat at much more than that. So, the kind of ordering and the invoicing is, pretty quick and easy and back and forth. But we definitely have relationships with the chefs and the restaurants that we work with beyond that.
And I think it's important too to add on to that. Exactly what Dru said is that, they've all been out at the farm. They have all brought crew out. Some of them we're also have become friends with, and so they'll come over and we'll cook dinner for them, and it's got nothing to do with work. I mean, yes, it's a business relationship, but it's a friendship also. And so the way we feel about it, we both really like to cook, and they cook for people every day. And so there's definitely some that we have over to our house. To eat just completely friendship based, not anything work based.
I guess one of the perks of working with restaurants is that when we go out to dinner now at restaurants that we sell to, I don't think that this is probably just for us, but we get so spoiled, and we get things that aren't necessarily on the menu, and the chefs that we work with are just able to completely transform the produce that we grow, and that's so fun to be a part of.
When you're selling to the restaurants, is it case packs, or are you allowing people, if somebody wants 19 bunches of beets, can they order 19 bunches of beets?
Yeah, so most things are ordered by the pound. We do a few things by account, like if we started doing strawberries this year for the first time, and so they would want to order a number of quarts because they may not know how many pounds are in a quart, that kind of thing. But on the whole, it's ordered by poundage. Sometimes for things like romaine or butter crunch, they'll order, they'll ask us, well, about what size it is or what do you think they weigh, and then they'll order a count on those. But on the whole, it's poundage. And is it a standard? Again, like just to take the beet example, I always pack beets in a 25-pound case. We didn't do anything else. Do you guys do? Somebody wants to order 17 pounds of beets. Can they do that? Yep, they can order whatever they want poundage wise. So yeah, and we actually don't pack any. The only thing that we pack into boxes are our wholesale accounts, and they supply, and those are all 10-pound boxes of beets, 10-pound boxes of turnips, 10-pound boxes of carrots. And they supply the boxes for those. And so everything else is either packed into bulb crates that we drop off and then kind of cycle through for things like potatoes or onions or those types of things. A lot of times the chefs will order a crate. They won't even put a poundage on it. They'll say, I'll take a crate of red, a crate of russets, and a crate of Yukons or something like that. But then other things are packed into 18 by 24 bags for the most part. So, they may order 12 pounds of salad mix, and we usually pack about 3 pounds into each bag. So they'll get 4 bags.
And one of the things that we've found is that there are some restaurants when they're just getting started, or food trucks when they're just getting started, that have a lower volume where, we've had really, Adam and I have had really, kind of difficult conversations about, does it make sense to add this restaurant account when we add up, our cost of delivery and to what we're delivering to them, how are we going to decide what is the minimum quantity that they need to purchase to make it worth our while? And we also want to be able to invest in other small food businesses. So there are sometimes early on when a new business is getting started, whether that's another farm or an incubator farm or a local grocer or a food truck or a restaurant, where sometimes we make decisions in our business where it doesn't make complete economic sense. And I think we both agree on it. Adam's a little bit more, leans a little bit more towards the economics of the decision. But then it gets to a point where, we have some restaurants where we say, we can't make that delivery. This is too small of a volume. But if you meet us at one of the other restaurants that we're delivering to, then then we'd be happy to do it for you. And so, those are that's kind of part of that marketing relationship. And for us trying to figure out, who does it make sense to us? Who does it make sense for us to sell to? And
I guess, part of that sounds like is making an investment in somebody that you think is going to grow into a more viable customer at some point in the future.
Exactly.
Yep. And I think that we're fortunate enough to have cash flow now on the farm, both through farm sales and through our off-farm jobs, where we can, pick up. It's not like all the restaurants we work with are, buying small volumes, but we're at a point where we can say, okay, let's maybe not make money so much on this one right now, because we're making money on other parts of the business and with our off-farm jobs. So we can kind of, float that a little while until we see kind of what they're going to end up at.
Are there certain crops that you guys focus on for your sales to restaurants?
Salad mix is a big one, definitely.
Tomatoes in the summer.
Yeah, tomatoes, heirlooms, cherries, and red slicers are definitely big ones for the restaurants. Cucumbers, some of them, poblano peppers are for a couple of them, where we used to grow a lot of different kinds of hot peppers, and we've kind of been like, okay, how do we pare this down? And I think as we've grown to, and Drew, if this makes sense to you, or if it doesn't say so, but where we've kind of gone as we've scaled up, and I think this is where everyone goes as they scale up, is we've gone from less volume or smaller volumes of so many crops to larger volumes of a lesser number of crops, if that makes sense. And it's not like we're only growing 2 or 3 things. We're still growing probably 25 or 30 different things, but it's definitely more volume of them.
Yeah. And I think that what we also try to do is as we get to know the restaurants that we're selling to, is that sometimes we take a seed catalog, and the Johnny's catalog just came this week, and sometimes we'll take it and we'll sit at the bar in their restaurant and be like, hey, anything out of here look cool to you? Is there anything we should try to grow for you? We sell to a food truck called the Purple Carrot Truck, and we sometimes grow purple carrots for them. And it's things like that, where we might not grow a huge volume of them, but we might, for some of our restaurants that buy larger volumes, grow things that they're really interested in. And we always, Adam, you're exactly right. We're definitely growing larger volumes of fewer crops now, but I think we always try to leave a little bit of space for things that we can play with, and that our kids can play with too. So each of our kids have a bed in our big hoop house where they get to plant, it's their little hoop house inside the big hoop house, and they get to plant in those 4x8 beds, whatever they want to plant, however they want to do it with, some guy. Adam helps them with string tomatoes when it gets to that point. But I think that, we're certainly production oriented. And then we also try to leave some spaces where we can play with new crops, either that we want to or that our kids want to.
It's great. You don't make the kids trellis their own tomatoes out?
No,
they're not allowed to walk across the purlins on top of the house yet either. But there's certain things where there's some limit.
So I think I'd be probably doing a disservice not to get into the winter production and the and the high tunnel production in general. Adam, you're especially known as being an expert, or at least a resource in that area. You're modest enough. You're probably not going to label yourself as an expert. But can you tell us how your production works in the high tunnels?
Sure. And Drew, obviously jump in here at any point.
Yeah, I'm not meaning to exclude you, Drew.
No, so I would say it's changed over time. That when we first started, it was kind of similar to what we were just saying. We had actually beds running the short distance. So we had 23 beds in a house, and each one of them had, different things in it as we were trying to figure out what we like to grow, what the markets wanted, what volumes we needed, those types of things. And, as we've changed, we're now into basically blocking systems. So we're doing, our beds all run the long ways. They're all basically 4-foot wide beds with a 1-foot walkway, and they're usually single crops. So, we've got 6 houses. We do 2 in tomatoes every year. So we've got a 3-year rotation with those tomatoes. We do 1 in cucumbers. We do 1 in peppers, which I know doesn't help with the tomato rotation, but we at least have them staggered between there year to year. And then the same kind of thing in the winter where we're doing, whole houses of spinach, whole houses of kale, whole houses of salad mix, those types of things. So we're blocking now for rotation and for volume. And, more or less the way that it works for us is that, we're planting in the spring. We can do transplants where we're at in the, warmer part of zone 4, colder part of zone 5. That we're planting in, basically transplants can go at the end of February for us. Direct seeded stuff we've pushed to kind of beginning to middle of March. And then our warm season crops are going in usually April 15th to April 23rd, 24th, around there. They're in there all summer, and then we're coming back in sometime between, depending on the crop, 1st of August and end of October, we're putting in this winter crop, sometimes transplant, sometimes direct seeded, with the idea of we are keeping those tunnels full as much as we can, as often as we can. When the crop's ready to come out, we're pulling that crop, prepping that space, and getting something planted again. The way we look at it is we paid a premium to cover that space. And so we need to keep things growing in there because, those without anything growing in them, those tunnels are only costing us money, or they're not, realizing their higher profit potential that we could have.
So all of the tunnels are unheated?
All of the tunnels are unheated. All of them are single layer plastic. So we used to do double layer plastic when we started. And then when we rented that space next door at our neighbors, we don't have electricity over there. So there are some ways to do 2 layers without electricity with the foam blocks or the plastic blocks or otherwise, or there's some solar options now that are out there. But we just said, hey, you know what, let's try this. Let's see what it looks like to do 1 layer of plastic and see how long we can grow with it. And, it was only 1 year and it was only a few houses, but, comparatively, I think the single layers do just as well for us as the double layers. And, it's when we start looking at the numbers of it, it's like, okay, if we have 1 house, and a sheet is 500, a sheet of plastic, let's just say is $500, okay, well, that's $500 extra to double layer it every 4 to 5 years. So not very much. But when you start to throw 6 houses into there, or we actually have another house that we use for wash pack and storage, it's a 20 by 48, nothing's grown in it. But it's like when you start saying, okay, well, there's 6 or 7 extra sheets of plastic, that become at $500 a pop, that becomes a different economic game than a single house or even 2 houses. So yeah, all single. We cover. We put an internal cover in them, like most people do. We have a big one that covers the whole thing, that rides on some wires that I know you and Colin had talked about. So that we used. That goes in about mid-October to early November. Gets it put in place. This time of year, we're pulling it open and closed on sunny days and cloudy days. It gets closed to trap that heat in. And then it usually stays on in the spring over the warm season stuff, well, the early seeded spring stuff, and then the warm season crops. It's staying on usually until we string tomatoes, because once we string those tomatoes up, there's not a way to open and close that cover.
Okay, so Adam also, they are unheated, but we do sometimes in the spring, depending on how cold the spring is. When Adam mentioned that our warm season crops go in around April 15th, if we have tomatoes in and it is a cold spring, we do run portable propane heaters overnight.
Yeah, that's good to say. And we usually end up running those probably 3 times a year in the spring, and they're just little 30,000 to 80,000 BTU ones that we hook up to a 5-gallon propane tank, like for a grill. And we usually will start them on those cold nights. We'll close the tunnel down early to build up some heat in there. And then we might start them at like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and then just let them burn out. And I think that, we've done it. We could not do those and be okay. But it's also just a little bit of insurance as well to look out there and see, just lets us sleep a little better on those nights. Or, and I think too that the tomatoes wouldn't necessarily die. They wouldn't even probably get cold damage, but it does keep it a little warmer. And I think that early on it keeps them moving along as well.
Yeah, I actually think that's probably more important with the tomatoes than we oftentimes give account to on an unheated tunnel, is just that night temperature. It's not just a matter of keeping the tomato alive, but it's a matter of making it think that it's summer and time to grow.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
So you mentioned you don't have electricity across the road. Do you have water over there?
We do. It's close enough that we actually, and we run everything off of our house well pump still. We're close enough that we can run to one of our hydrants. We can run 250 feet of hose, and then it ties into a drip over there. And we can't run all 3 houses at the same time, but we can run 2 of them. So 2 of the 3. So usually when we're watering over there, we are watering 2 and then watering the other one. But in the winter, we don't have any water over there because I don't think either of us are interested in running. There's a barbed wire, an old fence from when there were pigs at our house, long decades ago, and there's tree lines of autumn olive, and there's just we're not going to roll out and roll up hoses every time. So we don't have water in the winter there. And the way we deal with that is that at this time of the year, we're overwatering intentionally so that we're building up some of that soil moisture that can then carry us through the winter months and into the spring.
That gives me the willies.
Not water. I thought we had to water in the winter. I always thought we had to water in the winter. And then we were out east, in New England, talking to some farmers out there, and they were like, yeah, we don't really water that much in the winter. Sometimes we don't water at all. And so, just hearing that was like, well, hey, let's try it, So.
And there's there is a lot of moisture that builds up in those tunnels. So when you pull, like on a nice sunny day in early February, when you pull that internal cover open, there's condensation on there. So there's definitely some moisture in that house. We're not irrigating, but it's not like it's just a complete dry zone either. Ventilation
is just through the roll-up sides?
So we have roll-ups, and then we also have shutters on them in various forms, mostly aluminum shutters. One of the houses is wired to be on a thermostat. The rest we prop open with the handy little piece of 2x4, and stick it in there.
Okay.
So,
and those are just up in the peaks on the end walls, right?
Most of them are. Well, a couple of them are in the peak. A couple of them are on each side. We've switched over to the used tunnels that we built. We put some of them had big doors. We also built big doors on them so that we could get the tractor in there. And in those cases, sometimes there's not enough room for a big shutter up above the door because they're 8-foot tall doors. And so those are on each side of the doors then, which doesn't get as much of that humidity out that's up to, or that moisture out that's up top, but we will open those and especially in the winter. So right now our sides are, even though it's 45 here today or so, our sides are wiggle wired in, so our roll-ups are not functioning right now. But we do use those shutters because it doesn't matter what we're talking about with the humidity. We don't want 55 degrees and 100% humidity and not a lot of sun. I mean, that's a recipe for fungal growth in really densely planted plants, So
right.
We'll open those even at about, 45 or 50, when it's inside, even 45 or 50, even in the winter, if it's sunny and it's, it might be 0 out, but it might be sunny and it'll heat up in there, and we'll open those to try to get that moisture out. Having it be 80 degrees or 75 degrees in there during the day in the winter is not what we're looking for. That's not going to get us more plant growth. All that's going to do is stress the plants out, because when that sun goes down, it's going to be 10, 12 degrees again in there, and they're going to have a, 70, 80 degree temperature swing. They're not happy.
And you guys don't worry about the fact that you're venting out that precious moisture over on the other piece of property?
No, I think that there is so much moisture and so much humidity in there in the winter that we're trying to. I'd say if anything, we have too much humidity, and we're trying to get that out because it will, especially in things like salad mix or head lettuce. Downy mildew is an issue for sure in them. So and other fungal diseases too.
So, Adam, I'm really interested in this. You mentioned the high tunnel as a packing house. You said it was a 20 by 48. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that's constructed?
Sure. So, it's a standard 20 by 48 foot hoop house. It's positioned between the field that's closest to the cooler and the cooler so that everything kind of flows from the fields to that point. We do wash things outside when it's warm enough. We don't really tend to wash things inside in there. It's got a woven, landscape fabric floor. It acts as, again, the, kind of packing area as well as storage for tools and bulb crates and quart containers and, everything else and kids' toys and those types of things too. So it's set up like that. And when you come in, we've got tables on the right. So things are washed outside. They come in. There's the scale, bags, those types of things that will get weighed out. There's a big table for mixing salad mix or other greens. Then they get weighed, and then you can turn around and get it set on the a table there behind it where then it can go out and into the cooler facility or into our walk-in cooler. I would say that it works well. It is cheap for sure. It was part of the used ones that we bought, but even new, I think it's clearly less than a pole barn. But it does have its limitations. Without we don't have running water in there right now, but it is temporary for us. But I think that you could take one and make it more permanent, run water into it, those types of things, so that it could work really well. And then in the summer, what's nice about it is we take shade cloth, a 70% shade cloth, and put it over the top of there so that especially the greens that get moved in there aren't in a hot outside or in hot weather. And then also for employees, packing stuff in a covered area. If it was just the regular greenhouse plastic without that shade cloth, it would be way, way, way too hot for both employees and product.
Is that ventilated with roll-up sides then, or like your other tunnels?
Yep, it has roll-up sides, and then it has a person door at one end, and then we've actually built big swinging doors at the other end, which is about a 7 feet tall by 8 feet wide, so 2 4-foot doors on the far end. But we need to get a stump ground out a stump before we can get that door to work.
Okay, and with that enclosed space, then does that become a rodent-proof, insect-proof, or at least rodent-resistant and insect-resistant space? Yeah, or is there still room for all those critters to come in?
I'd say it's better than doing it outside. I mean, it's not sealed at the ground. If they do want to get in, they can, but we also have the tables where things are getting washed and packed on, and those tables are definitely before we harvest or before we pack on them, they're getting washed, and after we pack on them, they're getting washed. So and it just being covered in general is a really nice thing as well. Just so we don't have anything packing out in the open works, but also having something over the top so that if there's birds, if there's anything else that flying overhead, that it's covered and protected under there also.
And then earlier in our conversation, you guys, I forget who it was, one of you alluded to storage crops that you're doing. So is that alongside of your winter production that you've got storage crops that you're releasing through the winter season?
Yeah, so we've always done a little bit of them. This is the first year that we've done a lot of them. And from what it seems like right now at the beginning of December, we need to do a lot more. So, definitely. And this has come from being able to rent that other property, so that we can put things in so that there is open land in, June and July where we can seed, carrots or beets or, even later in the year doing it. But we did a lot of hacker eye turnips right now that are in the cooler. And then definitely the potatoes, the beets have been something that the wholesale market is really interested in, tricolored beets and tricolored carrots. So those are things that we're scaling up on, and actually thinking about maybe renting some other property from a neighbor on the other side of us to be able to do more acreage of those winter storage crops. I think that, one, they help sell the greens at the market because it is a winter market. So they help sell the greens, and the greens help sell the roots. But also it's really nice to just be able to, go in and pull things out of the cooler when we need them and not have to go out and play this guessing game of when are we going to harvest, when it's going to be sunny enough this week. So just being able to have that in there and have crops in my mind that's cash banked. It's basically we have a cooler full of cash right now. It's just our job to figure out how to withdraw it. And so that's nice to have in there, especially given the last 2 years. The overall temperature has been warmer for the last 2 years, but our last 2 winters have been really, really cold where, come mid-January, late January, we haven't been harvesting out of the tunnels very much. And so having this other crop or products that we can take, to market or to restaurants is going to be has been really nice this year so far.
And I think for us, just having that walk-in cooler, it was a game changer. Now it allows us to do storage crops, but it just in terms of being able to scale up and to have some more control over quality post-harvest and maintaining that quality of your product, that has also helped relieve some of the stress, with harvest. And it's just been an incredible asset that probably came in retrospect. I wish we would have had sooner.
And you mean year round, Dru, right? Not just for the winter storage.
Exactly. Year round.
Yeah. To be able to harvest, say, green beans or to harvest lettuce or whatever the day before market, and instead of trying to do it all in one day. That's a great point.
Yeah, it's one of those things on my farm. We built the walk-in cooler in July of our second year. I think we finished it in early August. And I say second year, we started our farm and started farming in August. And so that by the next August, we had the walk-in cooler. And it was, I hate the term game changer because I think it's overused, but walk-in coolers are truly game changers. I mean, they make everything different on the farm.
Everything changes.
Yeah. And all of it for the better.
Yeah, I agree completely.
So, Dru, I wanted to ask you, and God, I think I do this in every podcast when I ask this kind of a question. I go like, I'm the middle-aged white guy asking this question from my perspective of privilege here. But I know that being a woman farmer comes with some particular challenges. And I would think especially being in a relationship with somebody as high profile in the industry as Adam is. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I think that for the most part, I have worked really hard over the last 10 years to earn respect in this industry. And I think I have that. But there are definitely times where, and in addition to that, I get to work with women through my job with the Michigan Farmers Market Association position who incredibly inspire me, whether they're farmers or market managers or, work with MSU Extension. And I think that those types of networks and having other people that you can just throw ideas off of, as well as friends, can be really valuable. And we used to always, they used to always harass me in the beginning years that I was just Adam's wife, because everywhere we would go would be like, oh, you're Adam's wife. And so one of my colleagues would tease Adam, and they would just be like, oh, are you Dru's husband at conferences? And so, we kind of tried to lighten that mood, but there's definitely some gender stereotypes and some differences in the way that men and women are respected in different venues. But I think that there are things that are happening right now in food and ag that are incredibly encouraging. So in Michigan, Michigan Food and Farming Systems is working on building a women in ag network, and there's women in ag networks at the national level. The Center for Regional Food Systems here in Michigan is having conversations about racial equity along with other partners. And even at the state level, there's some work with, the Leadership Academy is making sure that there's an equal number of women getting leadership training as there are men. And so a lot of that is really encouraging to me. And I think that there is going to be a transition to having stronger and more female voices involved in decision making, because there's so many times where I walk into a room and it's primarily white guys and making decisions about state level programs and policies. And I think that if there are more, there are so many brilliant women farmers, and the more women farmers that are able to kind of draw on strong networks and be part of that decision making is going to be really beneficial for all of us, not just for women, for all of us as a society.
Awesome. Thanks, Dru.
Yeah.
So with that, let's turn to the lightning round here that we do at the end of every show. So, Dru, what's your favorite tool on the farm?
Favorite, it's not necessarily a tool, but I would say our walk-in cooler is my favorite piece of equipment.
And remind me again how big that cooler is.
8 by 10. Is that right, Adam?
Yeah, that's right. And Chris, I think about 4 years ago when we were building it, you told me that we should build a bigger one, and we should have built. It took us 4 years to get there, but now we need a bigger one.
I think the phrase I probably used was 100 by 200, Adam. 100 by 200.
And now we tell every other farmer that asks us, we're like, oh, you definitely need to build it bigger.
Well, and the nice thing about a small cooler is that can always become your onion storage, and next, when you put up the next one, that becomes your roots and green storage over the winter.
Definitely.
Adam, what's your top tip for high tunnel construction?
Build it with someone who knows what they're doing. If you can,
right.
I think take your time. That is really true. But if you can't do that, take your time. Make sure that you square it up and lay it out right, and measure that multiple times. Because if it's out of square, the further you get into the building process, the more it's going to be, off and harder to build.
Okay, so I know that some of the worst fights that I had with my farming partner were about how square was square, and I know from talking to other people this is not uncommon. So how square is square, Adam?
I think within an inch is good.
Or maybe I should be asking Dru how square is square.
That's actually something that I just leave up to Adam. There are certain activities on the farm where I just walk away and I just tell me you tell me when this is done.
Adam, do you have things that you walk away from too?
Probably I should have things that I walk away from.
I think there are more things where I encourage Adam to walk away from them. Okay. So Adam has a really a quick temper and can react to things pretty quickly. And we, in our early, and this is related to farming, early in relation to our farming career, I'd be like, you need to take like a 12-hour walk away from it, whether it's insect damage or, something that's really frustrating him, because we make better decisions together when it's not after a really frustrating experience.
That's true across the board. I think it's true for everybody. You guys are enmeshed in a world of resources, but when you've got questions, where's the first place you turn?
Other farmers.
Definitely. No doubt about that.
And you find that even in kind of your expert positions, that's still something that you can do without jeopardizing your position as kind of Adam Montri and Dru Montri of Ten Hens Farm.
Oh, yeah. I think that we respect the farmers that we work with as much as they respect us. And I don't think that jeopardizes it in any way. It just strengthens it when we're back and forth asking what people are doing and asking for their opinions. We learn so much from other farmers. I think it's a really incredible resource. And
then, Dru, what's your favorite crop to grow?
Peas, green arrow peas. Shelling peas.
Shelling peas.
Oh, yeah.
Aren't those just a giant pain in the ass?
Oh, no. They are the best tasting crop fresh from the plant. And my great-grandma Lydia, who our daughter Lydia is named after, grew green arrow shelling peas, and my dad grows green arrow shelling peas. And it's one of my favorite childhood memories of just being able to go in the garden and eat fresh peas. And so we grow them every year, and our kids eat so many of them. It's really fun for us, and we sell some too.
Love that. How about you, Adam? What's your favorite crop to grow?
Cherry tomatoes are probably my favorite crop to grow. There's so many different varieties. There's so many different things that we try to do each year with them, different pruning, different training, those types of things. And I feel like they're sort of this like tomatoes are this like horticultural crop where you get to use all these different things that you learned about how plants grow and how they fruit and why they do things. And you get to be a part of, directing that. And they make money.
And it's just, it's so sweet that we both love pain in the ass crops.
All right. And if you guys could go back in time and tell your beginning farmer selves one thing, what would it be?
I have 5 things that I think that beginning farmers need. Adam and I talk about this all the time. If we were to do it over, what would we say? The things that I think farms need to invest in are refrigeration, hoop houses, labor, a tractor, and then we always say for us it's beer or some type of fun, whatever it is, to give some stress relief, just to make sure that like if you can focus on the things that are going to make your farm productive, but also remember to have fun while you're doing it, is really important.
And I would agree with all those. And I think, in general, what I would say too is that when you get started, or maybe I should just make it personal. When we got started, like Dru said, I can sometimes have a pretty quick temper. And when I get stressed out, that gets even shorter. And there are going to be people, hopefully you're in a position where people are going to want to help you and try to help you. And if they're coming in, if it's family or it's friends and they're saying, hey, what can I do to help? Don't be an asshole to them. They're trying to help. And, they understand that you're stressed out and they're asking what can they do to help because they can see that you're stressed out. So take a breath, be nice to them and understand that they're trying to make things better or easier or lend a hand to you. So if they say, what can I do? And you're trying to weed stuff or pack stuff or do whatever, just say thank you. And you can do this to help me.
And that probably comes with employees too, and just relationships in general. Like sometimes when you get really busy, we both try to invest in the people that surround us, whether that's family or friends or colleagues. And all of that is really important and important to remember, even when you're busy and you're working every day from 5 a.m. till 11 or 12 at night. Making time for other people and to give yourself a little bit of break is important.
Dru and Adam, thank you so much for being part of the Farmer to Farmer podcast. I really appreciate all the time and the energy that you guys brought to the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. So wrapping things up here, I'll say again that this is episode 43 of the Farmer to Farmer podcast, and that you can find the notes for this show at farmertofarmerpodcast.com by looking on the episodes page or just searching for Montri. That's Montri. If you enjoy the podcast, I think you will also enjoy my weekly email newsletter, The Flying Rutabaga. The Flying Rutabaga runs the gamut from practical templates for delegation to guidelines for watering transplants. You can sign up at farmertofarmerpodcast.com or purplepitchfork.com. Also, if you enjoy the show, it would be great if you would pop on over to iTunes, leave us a review, and make a comment on the show notes, or tell your friends on Facebook. These reviews and referrals are the bread and butter of making this show available to an ever wider group of listeners. And you know what else? I'd love to hear your suggestions for guests on the show. I know a lot of things, but I know that I don't know all of the great farmers out there. Please visit farmertofarmerpodcast.com and use the contact form to tell me who you'd like to hear. Thank you for listening. Be safe out there and keep the tractor running.